Good morning and hello. Welcome to this month's webcast, the Nonprofit Leadership Cliff, How to Act Now to Build Leaders at All Levels. My name is Max Smith. As you're all aware, today's webcast is brought to you by 501c Agencies Trust. We're the nation's largest and oldest unemployment program, working since 1982, about 35 years this year. We provide several services surrounding your unemployment alternatives, including pre-employment services, claims management, and budget saving protections. So we welcome everybody on today's webcast. We have a great one going for you. I have a bit of housekeeping to get through before we hand it over to Daniel, our presenter today. As you're all aware, we will take questions as we go, and the materials will be available in our email following the program today. So if you need copies of the slides, you'll get those at the closing of the session in our follow-up email, which goes out about an hour afterwards. Today we do have recertification credits available as well. Those credits will be assigned to you hopefully by the end of the week. You're going to need to complete our post-event survey in order to get those credits, and that allows you to tell me what you want, whether HRCI or SHRM or both. So please complete that survey. It'll pop up when we close our survey at the end, plus there'll be a link at the bottom of that email that also has the slides. So the follow-up email will have the slides and the survey. If you can get that for me, that makes it easier on me to get you your credit. And also, we do this once a month. We try to do it once a month. As always, if you all have something you think we should be covering, please feel free to let me know. You have my email address, and I will do my best to get you what you want. Having said all that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Daniel. Good morning, Daniel. How are you?
Good morning, Mac. Am I coming through okay on your end?
I can hear you fine. For people who don't know Daniel, he's the founder of an organization called BraveShift. They're a design firm for nonprofits. He's been doing this for about 25 years, and that includes about 10 years as a CFO and CEO for some international NGOs. I've personally worked with him several times, and he's one of my favorite people to work with, so I know he's going to entertain everybody today and get you the proper information that you need. So, Daniel, just take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks for the intro, and hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So I met just as a way of a little bit more introduction of myself. As Max said, I worked for 25 years in the not-for-profit sector, primarily for a variety of international NGOs. They typically were around 300 to 400 staff and budgets of about $60–70 million. So relatively, large organizations by comparison to many smaller domestic organizations. So out of that 25-year career, as Mac mentioned, I spent about 12 years as a chief financial officer and chief operating officer. So I was one of those people sitting around the table year after year for many years concerned about leadership development and learning and how to move the organization forward. And in the last couple of years, I transitioned out of my CFO, COO work and launched BraveShift about 2 years ago. And so now I focus on work around leadership and culture and change management for mission-oriented organizations. The presentation today called the Nonprofit Leadership Cliff sounds scary. We're all aware of the statistics. There's statistics and there's stories we hear that theoretically in the next 5 to 10 years there's expected to be a high level of retirements and transitions at the senior level of many organizations around the country, just based upon demographics of who's in those leadership roles. So one of the reasons why some of you may be joining the call today is this notion that there's this looming succession potentially happening in your organization, and so you may be concerned about being prepared for that by building the bench strength internally of the staff on your current organization in building and beefing up their leadership skills and abilities. Another reason why folks might be on the call today, I certainly hear a lot in my current practice of concerns regarding, I'm going to say, middle management, and concerns that middle management folks, while they are certainly prepared and capable as technical experts, need to develop themselves more strategically in terms of their leadership thinking and abilities. So maybe you're here because you're interested in offering some sort of a developmental opportunity for middle management in your organization. Another reason why you might be here, I'm saying here, hungry millennials. I hear over and over again, and with most organizations I work for, and I experience this myself directly, that the younger cohort, let's say, in the workforce today is very much looking for professional development and learning opportunities. And so that might be something that you're hearing from your staff now, and you're thinking to yourself, what can I do? How can I act more quickly to respond to that request from my millennial cohort in the office? So you're here for various reasons, obviously. Just in general, you want to actually finally act. And again, I'm thinking back to my days sitting around the table with other members of senior management. I oftentimes myself became a little bit frustrated with the fact that we weren't actually acting. We spent a lot of time talking about the need for leadership development, but didn't actually move forward. And so there's a lot of analysis paralysis that happens. So hopefully on the call today, I will go over with you a relatively simple approach, getting something off the ground for yourself that's relatively straightforward and lean and mean and not very expensive. Obviously, everyone's worried about cost. And I think the reality is that, as I will go through in a minute, all of you can definitely move forward with a leadership development program in your organization, no matter what size you are, no matter what budget you have. It's all really based upon experiential learning. So it just basically takes organization and planning, and then you can get something going. So hopefully, in terms of what I just said, while you're here today, I'm hitting on some of the nerves that are getting you on the call. So we'll go on to talk about the actual content. Now, Mac, I'm hitting the advance button, and it's not advancing for me, so maybe I can ask you to do that. Great. So Mac is going to be Vanna for the rest of the call. So just talking about the strategic case, you know, so often when senior management are assessing whether or not they want to invest time and effort in a formal leadership development program, everyone talks about return on investment. I actually try to shy away from trying to do number crunching and a lot of like arguing how to precisely measure the impact of leadership development in your organization, because I believe the following is true, and I believe the following you also know is true, and that is that you can get a lot done. You can achieve a lot, you can get results in your organization, and you already are, just through management, through good management. But management is not the same as leadership. So I just think of management as being about planning, resource mobilization, and the like, coordination of tasks, right? Measurement, quality assurance, and quality control. Those are all incredibly important things, and you can actually achieve a lot in an organization just with management. But leadership is really, as you see here in the slide here, for me, more about a pattern of behaviors and actions and words that engender a felt sense of shared purpose, and it drives people to be engaged, and it drives people to really be brave enough to be creative and to innovate and to dig down deeper than they normally would to get not only to the results that you hoped for, but even maybe beyond that. So to me, again, you can say, we don't have the time, the inclination, the resources to do leadership development. We're just going to focus on achieving through management. And I think you actually, frankly, you could be fine by doing that. But I also believe that by developing the leadership in your organization, it really brings a meaningful qualitative change that drives performance beyond what you're capable of achieving with mere management. So that's my little soapbox moment for the day. I'm not going to do any more soapbox stuff. Why don't you advance back to the next slide for us? Super. So assuming you're here today for one of various reasons, you're concerned about succession, you want to develop the strategic capabilities of middle management, you want to provide an offering for your junior cohort of staff, you could do it yourself. I don't think you need to hire someone like me or hire someone else and hire a coach and spend a lot of money. All of us have the ability to do our own internal leadership development program. There's just a few characteristics that you see here that I would suggest to be part of that. Number one, that you make sure that you engage participants in this development program that are across functions. And I say that it may seem self-evident, but I've been hired to work with organizations where I was only asked to come and work with this division or that department. And what happens is that's great. You can develop the people in that one particular vertical within the organization. And then what happens there is that you have those folks introduced to new skills and new ways of thinking and new concepts. And then they're now trying to interact with colleagues across other functions. And it creates actually friction because those folks haven't gone through the same program, are not speaking the same language. So I really think that you should think about making sure that there's folks across functions involved in your program. Secondly, believe it or not, across levels. And again, more and more these days, in all the work I do, I really try to insist that we not think of a leadership development program as being just about middle management, just about senior level, just about junior, but actually think about who in your organization is prepared and interested and willing to put in the time and effort to really develop themselves intentionally and learn as a leader. And it actually can be very powerful to get people working together and experiencing this learning coming from different levels of experience. So that's number two. Number two is a characteristic. The third one is to remember this is experiential. So this is not sending people away to a training workshop with Daniel or some other person to sit in a room and listen to all these wonderful things that they're going to do to exercise leadership when they get back to the office. This is actually taking real work that has to get done in your organization and using that real work as the experience that they're going to base their leadership development upon, okay? Fourth is it's really helpful if you can engage mentors in the process. So there may be people in your organization or outside your organization, for example, that can be paired with the people going through your program and serve as their mentors during the course of the learning. That's number four. Number five, to make sure that you give enough time for this to happen. Again, this is not a thing where you say, here's a week, we're going to let some folks go to some training, come back from the training, and poof, they're all of a sudden better leaders. This is, again, an experiential process that's going to be done doing real work over a period of time, and I would say a minimum of 6 months. Typically, I would say this would be a 6, 8, 12-month long program. So those are the main characteristics of the program that you're going to pursue. Mac, next slide, please. Let's see. There you go. Okay. So the 5 steps for designing your leadership development program are the following. Number 1, and I'm going to go through these one by one in more depth, is to settle on your definition of leadership. Number 2, to make an intentional decision and choice about which particular qualities matter most that you want people to focus on developing that are most meaningful for you right now, for your organization. Number 3, be disciplined in making choices about whom you really need to participate in the program, because it probably can't be everyone. Number 4 is to be clear on articulating a shared statement of purpose about this program, effectively a shared mission statement for this leadership program. And number 5, be really mindful about mapping out the various experiences, the real life hands-on experiences, and the mentors that you're going to involve in the process, and make sure that those experiences and the mentors make sense as a holistic picture, right? So those are the 5 steps. I'm going to go through those a little bit more in depth now, one by one. So Mac, why don't you advance the slide? Let me pause actually and just remind folks that you can stop us along the way and type in questions. So I'm happy to stop and answer questions along the way. I am a fast talker, so I'm reminding myself right now I'm a fast talker. So I'm going to now try to slow down a little bit. But again, happy to stop along the way and answer any questions that you have. So again, going through these steps one by one. So the first mistake that we make when we're going to do a leadership development program is to neglect and avoid stopping and making a decision about what we actually mean by leadership. We just take for granted, I suppose, that we know what we actually mean by leadership, and that's a mistake. So we want to actually stop and take some time to deliberately choose and define what we mean by leadership for us, for you, in your organization at this point in time. Next slide, Mac. Okay, so the advice to avoid the mistake is to actually, obviously, identify and adopt a specific definition of leadership that speaks to you, that makes sense with respect to your values, your culture, and the strategy of your organization. So this is a task that actually is a very interesting one, and I imagine that this should involve the senior team in your organization, along with the person that you would have designated to lead the effort to design and develop this leadership development program. So that you've got to identify someone internally, if it's maybe your HR person or someone on your senior team that has a passion for this topic, for this subject, or a member of your board who has a background in HR, or certainly if you want to hire an outside person, but someone's going to be the one that's going to design and lead the process. But the conversation about determining and choosing what is going to be our definition for leadership that we're going to adopt and utilize for this program falls to your senior management team, okay? Now, there's obviously about 1 billion definitions of leadership out there. So you can start Googling and you can start looking and find what works for you. I'm going to give you a couple of places to start right now so you can save a little bit of time. So Mac, why don't you go on to the next slide for us. So I, in my practice, in my own practice, have a definition of leadership that I use. So I'm offering this as one example of where you might start. So the definition that I use for my practice is that leadership is about motivating and engaging both oneself as well as others to strive towards a common purpose. So you can take this definition, you can say, we love that, let's use that, done. You can check off the box. Or you can tweak it. So as an example, some folks, when I'm doing workshops or when I have consulting gigs with folks, they don't like the word strive, okay, because they want to see that we achieve a common purpose. They don't want to see the striving. I like the word striving because it has that connotation of continuing reaching, and it has a connotation for me of implying that there's success and failure along the way. So I like strive, but you might want to tweak it and change it to make better sense for you at this point in time. So that's just one example of one definition of leadership that you could adopt. Next slide, Mac. There's a few other resources I can suggest for you. Some of you may already have heard of the Kouzes and Posner Leadership Challenge. I like this model a lot. So you can find this very easily online. What's cool about this leadership framework is that these folks have also developed a pretty robust survey tool that goes through, I think there's several dozen actually, skills and behaviors that you can sort of purchase this 360 assessment tool and get some really interesting feedback from it and utilize it as a way of informing and shaping the leadership program going forward for your folks. So Kouzes Posner Leadership Challenge, great one, really robust survey tools. Robert Greenleaf Servant Leadership is one that I've seen on and off over my career, is oftentimes very popular, especially in not-for-profit organizations. I'm not aware that the servant leadership model from Robert Greenleaf has a survey tool associated with it. So if that's important to you, then that's probably not one to look at. And then there's the Bass and Avoglio multi-factor leadership. This is actually a version of transformational leadership. And there's also a pretty neat MLQ, it's called MLQ survey. So both the first and the third one on this slide it's not just a leadership framework, a conceptual framework, but also have online survey tools that you can use to bolster your program. So in terms of step one, settling on your definition, there's the one I offer, and there's three suggestions here for you to start with, so you can make sure that you have an explicit understanding of what the heck you mean by the word leadership as you design your program. Great. So moving on, and again, stop me whenever you want to ask any questions. So step two, the second mistake we make is applying an impossibly numerous set of targeted competencies that will actually overwhelm your participants. So let me take as an example the Kouzes and Posner model I just mentioned. So I believe there's 36 or 48, something like that, different skills and behaviors that are incorporated into that model. If you try to say to the people in your program, we want you to pursue improving yourself on these 36 different skills and behaviors, they're obviously going to become totally overwhelmed with that process. So the key is, and you can advance the slide, Mac, that whichever definition of leadership you choose, to hone in on a handful only of the skills or behaviors that you think from that model are particularly important and relevant for your organization at this point in time. So I'm giving you, again, just an example here from the model that I use. In my model, it's broken into 3 different components: personal traits, relational actions, and then motivational actions and behaviors. So you see them here on the slide. I'm not going to go through them, but there's 15 of them. And so again, for example, I think 15 is completely overwhelming for someone to say, over the next 6 months, you should work on developing your openness, giving recognition to others, conscientiousness, advocating a vision. Their heads will spin. So make a choice. Once you've chosen the model you're going to work with, here are the, I'm just going to say, 2 or 3, maximum of 4 skills or behaviors that on an organizational basis you feel are most important right now for you, and make sure that all of your participants in the leadership program are going to focus on those 3 to 4. You can give them the option, additionally, that individually they may also make a choice to say, and also between myself and my supervisor, I'm going to choose another 1 or 2 in addition to the core 3 or 4 that we're going to agree to work on, that I'm going to also try to develop for myself as well. So you can branch out on that a little bit, but keep it to a maximum, again, 5 or 6 skills, behaviors, abilities that you're going to focus people on over the course of the program. Super. Okay, Mac, let's go to the next slide. What do we have next in store? So the third mistake that we make is being either so this is about who's going to be involved in your program. So either being way too restrictive or else being way too inclusive. So let me just talk about this for a second. I'm thinking back to an experience I had. I worked for a major national not-for-profit organization for a couple of years, and they were running a really effective internal leadership development program. And the problem with it was that, in my personal opinion, was that it was very, very restrictive. And so each year they were only choosing really just like a handful of people, like 5 people, to be tapped to participate in the program. Now, I'm sure that they were limiting that to some degree for budget reasons, etc. But it became a thing that it fed resentment among staff who felt that they were being excluded from this development opportunity, and why her and not me kind of stuff. So on the one hand, you don't want to be too restrictive in that sense. As I mentioned earlier in the opening comments, I would also not be too restrictive by saying, we're just going to do a development program for junior staff, or we're just going to do a program for a couple of senior people. Try to be more inclusive by involving people from different levels. On the flip side, if you go too far in trying to accommodate and worry about people's feelings too much, then you'll have too many people participating, and maybe have people participating that actually really are not ideal candidates. So actually, Mac, you can advance the slide here because I'm kind of getting into the advice piece. But you just be thoughtful about this. So definitely focus on cross functions, cross levels, but have an honest conversation with yourselves. I'm talking about yourselves between the person who you've asked to design this and a group of management that's kind of driving the process. Who right now are your high potentials or your highly engaged people, and make sure that you're as inclusive as possible to bring those folks into the fold. And then at the same time, the reality is that not everyone necessarily is even interested in being invited and asked to engage in this program. So the next slide is the dirty secret. You can advance to the next slide, Mac, that the reality is that not everyone needs to, not everyone is even really prepared or inclined to participate in the program. So this is one that's really difficult, I think, for you, and you have to exercise a lot of judgment to figure out who's going to be participating in the program. All right, good. Mac, next slide. So what's the next mistake that we make? The next one is that we fail to explicitly articulate what the actual expectations are from the program, what the benefits are that we are seeking from the organization and from the participants. So as I said earlier in my introductory remarks, I think it's difficult sometimes to expect you can measure the consequences of a leadership development program in black and white terms, because you're talking about developing people's skills and behaviors, and those will have an effect, obviously, in different ways over the course of time. So the measurement's tough, definitely, but you should have certainly expectations that relationships will improve among teams, that engagement will change. You should expect that they will have an impact on turnover, right? I think that you'll know it when you see it to a large degree, but try to really have a conversation to be as clear as possible from the get-go. You're not doing this program just to be nice to the people that are asking to have professional development. The purpose for this is to have a payoff for that supports the goals and objectives of the organization. So we tend to sometimes just sort of say, we're going to check the box. We've had people complaining that they want to have a professional development opportunity. So, okay, we're doing it. And now we on the management team are going to just turn our backs and we've checked that box. We're going to go on, go forward, and not worry about what happens. It definitely has to have a direct impact on your business and on your outcomes. So I guess the next slide. So basically, I would
All right,
spend...
Daniel,
Yes.
Daniel, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. We're getting some feedback on your mic there.
Is it still happening right now? Is it happening right now?
Yeah, you might want to mute it and just see if you can reset it somehow.
Mute what? What am I going to mute? Mute me? Is it still happening? Is it like horrendous? I don't know. I'm not sure what I can do to
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Trying to look around for what I can do in this thing. It did just start in the last couple of minutes. Or was it the whole time?
Yeah. Why don't you log out and log back in real quick?
You want me to log out, log back into the session?
Yes, please.
You really want me to? Okay, I will try.
Yeah. All right, sorry about that, folks. Actually, I think mine might be buzzing too. Just give us a moment to get this reset. Selma, can you tell me if I'm buzzing as well?
No, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. Thank
I
you.
think it was just his microphone.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and am I still making crazy echo sounds?
Oh, you sound so much better. You don't sound like a Terminator machine coming to get us.
Sorry. I'm gonna stay totally still and not move anything in my body.
There you go. No blinking.
Which, as you may all guess, is really hard for me because I really have been like flailing my arms all over the room as I've been speaking. So I'm not going to flail my arms anymore. I'm going to sit here very still. Yes. So Mac, can you go to the next slide then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can tell that you're talking like
I'm holding
very
my
carefully.
No. I'm sorry, you guys.
I don't think that helped.
All right. So the advice is to take the time up front to deliberately craft an inspiring statement of purpose, and do it on two levels. You should articulate the statement of purpose for the organization, and you should ask that each individual that's going to be participating in the program draft their own statement of purpose as well, and try to make it as specific and inspiring as possible. And this is a really important step not to skip, because you want to hold yourself accountable for that statement of purpose throughout the process. I mean, I put up, you can advance the next couple of slides, Mac, a couple of very simplistic examples. One, for the program here, I'm being silly here, the Super Leaders Initiative empowers program participants, et cetera, et cetera. So just the point is that this is a little bit generic, but try to make it as specific as possible and relate it directly to your strategic objectives and relate it directly to the kind of work that the participants are going to be engaged in throughout the program. Okay, so be as specific and as an inspirational as possible with this statement of purpose. All right, that's an example for the program. And then an example for the individual, my commitment is to embrace this opportunity to take on a leadership role in whatever organization, collaborating closer with my teammates, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of this, when you see that this person is talking about improving their emotional intelligence, just as an example of how a participant might hone in on one specific thing that they know they have to work on. It could be communication skills. It could be, again, like, developing a vision, et cetera. So be as specific as possible. Do not skip this step. When I talk about these things with folks, to me, when I'm talking out loud, I feel like this sounds so obvious and self-evident, and yet then I see people going through the motions and not taking the time to do these planning and these setup steps, which has a big impact on the quality, I think, and the results that they get from the process itself. Okay, so moving on to the next next mistake, Mac. The next mistake is implementing a program. So we talked about that this is going to be experiential, and we talked about the fact that you want to be giving the participants in the program real, actual work. So have them engage in some sort of initiative that is in your work plan that matters to the organization. And while they're doing that real, actual work, they're going to be, at the same time, intentionally applying the leadership model you've chosen, the practices that you've chosen, and they're going to be working with yourself and with their mentor, receiving feedback about how that's going. So they need to be doing real life work. The mistake that we make is we just give people a bunch of random assignments. So you have, let's say, 10 people involved in your program, and you just kind of give them a bunch of random assignments, but they don't really relate to one another. They don't really like make sense as a whole. So that's a mistake. So flip to the next slide, Mac, and try as much as possible, I would suggest, to map the different work assignments and experiences that the people are working on together so that they're all interrelated. It may actually even be that you lump people onto one overarching project initiative and have them work as a team. Different individuals are actually implementing different parts of that project, but just make sure it's all related, hangs together, not just a bunch of people running around in circles doing different things that have nothing to do with the other. And make sure, again, that you integrate mentors into this process as well, because without the mentor piece, it's really going to fall flat on its face. So, and then map this out. So once you actually visually map out the various participants, the different assignments that they're doing and how those assignments relate to each other and how those assignments relate to your strategy and your goals for the organization. So make it a very conscious decision to make it meaningful and an integrated program. Okay, that's advice number 5. Max, so advance the slide. So remember, folks, I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning. I developed this presentation initially for a 20-minute webinar I did a few months ago. So I'm just coming to the last couple of slides, and then we can just open it up and have Q&A and see what comments people have about the process. Just talking about affordability, and affordability is mainly in terms of time and effort, and then the benefits that you would derive from this kind of program. So in terms of the setup, I would estimate, I mean, I'm giving you just some guidelines here. I would estimate that whoever you choose to be the designer of the program, I would say it's about 40 hours worth of effort to lead the process of the 5 steps I just went through to get this set up and designed, to lead the process of researching and holding discussions around definitions of leadership, discussions around choosing who will participate, who will not participate, helping to identify mentors, identify assignments, map those together, etc. Lead the discussions and make sure people develop their statements of purpose. All of that, someone's got to coordinate and be the orchestrate this thing. So that's the designer of it. And I would estimate about 10 hours of time for the setup. Likewise, whoever's on your senior team, those folks should be engaged along the way to give input, take decisions around, again, participants, definition of leadership, assignments, etc. So I would guess around 10 hours of input from senior team members in the setup. And then during the course of the program itself, and I'm thinking about over like a 6-month period here, I would say about 48 hours for the designer and who's kind of going to run the thing, about 48 hours of time for the participants. This is outside of actually doing the work. I'm talking about the time of reflecting on their progress, talking with their mentors, getting a feedback from their teammates and from management on how they're doing, about 48 hours of work in addition to what they would normally be doing in their day. And then some hours for the senior team to be engaged periodically to see how we're doing. I just put a number here in terms of dollars and cents. This is intended to be done without any external consultants or coaches. I mean, you could hire coaches and that would be an additional cost. I just put a $500 number here, assuming that maybe you want to, if you utilize either the Kuzes and Posner, for example, material, and do one of their 360 feed surveys, or another survey, maybe $500, which is actually a high number per participant. So if you do this internally, have someone internally design it and move it forward, then you can do this really on a shoestring. I've listed some of the benefits on the right-hand side, which I'm sure that you're all familiar with. Actually, definitely goodwill towards you all for actually doing something and acting and offering this development program. Actually, I feel like, don't underestimate this, the experience that your senior team will go through, particularly on the setup portion of this, by sitting together and thinking about what is our definition of leadership for us, and by thinking about what are those skill sets and behaviors that we actually want to invite the program participants to develop. Honestly, those conversations are really excellent material and an opportunity to help even further develop the alignment and the cohesion among yourselves as a senior team. So I think it's actually a really powerful added benefit. Obviously, the purpose here is to increase the bench strength of all levels in your organization, and increase engagement, affect the work culture across your organization, and develop and encourage those who participated to be more willing to innovate, take risks, embrace change. Those are all some of the outcomes that I believe should be generally expected from a successful leadership development program. So, I'm a fast talker. I've covered all the material in about 40 minutes, Mac. Just again, in summary, these are 5 steps. Articulating your definition, deciding which few 5 or 6 max qualities actually matter the most. Being intentional and disciplined about whom you really want to and need to have participate in the program and who not. Be really explicit about articulating that shared purpose statement for both the program as a whole and every individual, and meaningfully map out the experiences and the assignments that they're going to be working on and the mentors you're going to bring in, and make sure that that has a cohesive picture that makes sense together. So that's my spiel. 40 minutes lightning speed. I hope I can still be heard. I guess I talk so fast.
We hear you.
I talk so fast that I talked over all your questions. So Mac, please tell me I can help with questions and comments and suggestions.
Absolutely. So we do have a couple of questions. I always have a couple of questions, so you're good to go.
Awesome.
But
not going to let me off the hook.
Exactly. So but we've got a question I'm sure you see a lot. The old, well, if I train my people, then they're going to leave. Can you address that and maybe provide some ideas to the attendees to, if they come up with a training program and they're going to their higher ups and they're trying to get permission, they get that kind of statement, what they should say back and how they should push back against something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't hear that too much. I mean, obviously, look, you've got to invest in your people. I think that, well, my argument back to that is that if you don't train your people and you don't invest in your people, they'll definitely leave. And frankly, if you make investments in your folks and they find over the course of time that they're ready to spread their wings and, you know, do better or something greater and grander, and you don't have the opportunity to offer them, then that certainly can happen. But I actually think that the greater risk actually is the flight risk and the turnover risk and the loss of high potential people by virtue of not offering them the opportunities. I don't have it on my fingertips, Mac, but, you know, if you look at, you know, there's a variety of, you know, HR research surveys out there. The reason why people leave jobs is more because, you know, the first reason is because their boss, they don't get along with their boss. And the second reason is actually not about compensation, it's about lack of developmental opportunity. So I think that more often than not, you'll be repaid with loyalty and engagement and productivity, then you will be paid back by people leaving in droves. So, you know, obviously that could happen, but I think you'll see more likelihood that you'll retain the people that you wish for longer periods of time. So, not sure if that helps.
Okay, that's great. Now, so we have a program that we've implemented, or we're getting ready to implement. How do we measure its impact? How do we, you know, so we've initiated a program, we've had one in the past, we're going to do another one. How do we measure the impact so that we can grow this thing and know that it's being a positive influence on the organization?
Yeah, this is going to be a lame response, but in large part it depends upon what you chose from the get-go, for example, as whatever those skills and behaviors that you wanted to develop people firstly. And a lot of what some people do is they'll do, so if you choose a tool like a Quizzes and Posner tool or some other tool, for example, that has a feedback tool, then what you would do is you would do initially at the beginning you would do a 360 feedback survey process as a baseline, right? And then after the program is ended, and I wouldn't do it like the date, like not the week after the program's ended. I would say maybe 3 or 6 months after the program is ended, to do another one of those surveys, the same survey that you did before, and compare the results to the baseline, because this is feedback that's based upon behavior patterns, and it requires time for individuals to establish the consistency in their new behavior patterns for other people to see it, right? So one part of the answer is it depends on the skill set you're measuring, and if you choose a leadership model, then do take a baseline survey to start with, and then do a follow-up later on. And then if you've identified as part of the program specific initiatives that the people in the program are working on, and you have certain results that you're expecting of those initiatives, then identify what those desired results are up front, and then you can measure what I'm talking about not behavioral results. I'm talking about business results. So you should identify up front what those expectations will be of those of the leaders once the program is over, and then you can measure against those. So that's my suggestion, Mac, for those.
Okay, so, and then I have one more. And if the audience, you have any questions, please shoot them over and we'll get Daniel to answer them for you. We won't let him leave until he's completed everybody's question. But one more from me is, are there any negatives if you don't follow through with this thing appropriately? Can you create any more trouble than you initially started with?
That's an interesting one, Mac. My silence is indicative that that's a new question for me. So where could you mess this up? I mean, I think that, yeah, Mac, that's hard for me to answer that question. Mac, can you help me out on your question? Do you have an example in mind of where you were imagining going off the rails?
Where I come from is, and I know I'm getting a little bit of an echo, so I'm trying not to talk as much as possible. Yeah. But where I get this from is, when you work in an organization and you see initiatives and they're never followed through with, and then the team starts to just kind of get, oh boy, they're coming with another such and such, they never follow up, these things never work, and it just kind of creates more animosity.
Well, that was actually that was the only thing that came to my mind actually when you asked the question, was just if you don't actually follow through on it, right? I mean, if you start something and make this big hoo-ha about this great program you're going to do with it, and then you don't follow through on it, then obviously you're going to open yourself up to a lot of criticism. So the lack of follow-through obviously will be open to be critiqued. I guess I was wondering whether or not you had embedded in your question, just, is there something that you could do wrong by going through the process? I mean, this is all, you know, like choosing, for example, here's an example. I mean, upfront when you're deciding which leadership tool you're going to use, for example, if you have an organization that tends to be very inclusive in its culture, and a lot of people want to be involved in decision making, then I might actually engage more than just the senior team up front in choosing your definition of leadership, and in choosing, for example, which leadership framework you're going to utilize, as opposed to, I mean, I described this process in my presentation today, assuming that you're going to define and design this thing with a small core group of senior management. That decision alone might be a bad piece of advice I'm giving to you, right? So one thing you might want to do is just think about how inclusive you want to be, even in designing the program itself, is one thing to think about, because then you know, I do see these days a lot of times, because the cultures of not-for-profits tend to be relatively open, if something is cooked up, you know, in the black box of just the senior team sitting in a corner office or in a boardroom somewhere, and then it's like launched on the staff, then you tend to be opening yourself up for criticism that, oh, you didn't really include us in that, and then it can go downhill from there. So maybe you take everything I said, folks, on this call, and to the extent that you want to engage more folks in design, if that's what your culture dictates, then do that.
Gotcha. Cool. Now we have Shirley, who wants to know, if there's no promotional opportunities at the other end of a program like this, how do you motivate participants? How can you keep them motivated?
I'm going to tell you, guys, I swear to you that most, not everybody, most people are looking for chances to learn and grow, and most people will understand this is not about getting a promotion. It's true that not everyone's going to have that expectation. I would be certainly really clear and transparent with everyone at the beginning that professional development and professional learning and growth does not equal promotion. Okay, it's not the same thing. But in my own personal experiences in engaging folks in talking about these programs, most people get that there's a difference between those two things. There's a difference between giving my next promotion, giving more money, right? And I would love to have the opportunity to learn and grow and be exposed to broader sets of experiences. Okay, so I think that generally speaking, the folks that will thrive and succeed the most in this kind of a program will not be looking for that quid pro quo. At the end of the 6 months, you're gonna like make me a manager. Okay, I've found in my own experiences that most of the time that's not the case. And I would say that if an individual is articulating that they expect that, like at the end of this, if there's nothing in it for me in terms of a promotion, then they're not, that's not the right person to really be engaged in the process, because you're talking about learning and growth and engagement, not that kind of a payback. I hope I don't sound a little bit harsh in that response, but honestly, this is not about gimme, gimme, gimme in terms of promotions and money. So be clear about that from the outset.
Excellent. Cool.
I don't feel strongly about that at all, Matt.
Well, we've exhausted our questions, unless anybody wants to shoot one more over. Other than that, Daniel, thank you so much for helping us out today. And like I said, for everybody, we will have another session at the end of July where WEBCAST is going to be doing a Beyond by the Book strategic planning at the end of July. We're moving to Tuesdays rather than Mondays at a request from you all, from our attendees. And we will follow up with your certification credits, provided you complete the poll right after this. So Daniel, thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate working with you again, my friend.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.